Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Baldur's Gate 3 Level 3 Spell Report Cards. Today we are going to cover a couple thematically druid options that are also very strong and available for other classes with Sleet Storm and Plant Growth. After the video, you can vote on what tier you think these spells should be in the polls in the description. Let's start with Sleet Storm. Sleet Storm. Call forth a storm that douses fire, creates an ice surface, and forces spellcasters to succeed at a concentration saving throw in order to maintain concentration. Ice is a surface that is considered difficult terrain. Creatures moving through it have their movement speed halved and will fall prone on a failed dexterity saving throw. This costs your action and your spell slot and your concentration to cast, and it has a range of 60 feet. For the concentration saving throw, there is a con save, and with falling prone, there is a dex save. This spell has a 10-turn duration and a radius of 30 feet, and it is learned by druids, sorcerers, wizards, nature domain clerics, tempest domain clerics, land druids, storm sorcerers, and via magical secrets. Sleet Storm's claim to fame is that it makes an ice surface, and ice surfaces are very strong, and we'll explain why. But not only does it just make an ice surface, many spells do that, it makes a huge surface. A 30-foot radius is insane. It is among the biggest spells in the game, the same size as Hypnotic Pattern. The spell itself lasts up to 10 turns, but the way the ice surfaces work, if you lose concentration, it won't instantly go away. The ice will still persist for a couple of turns, meaning that you can choose to concentrate on something else, or you can lose it accidentally and still get good value. So what makes an ice surface and this spell good? It's all about the prone condition. The spell will attempt to knock enemies prone on cast and whenever they walk on the ice. Ice is also difficult terrain, doubling enemy move speed cost. So, with all this in mind, having a huge ice surface makes a situation where enemies can be chain proned for the entire duration of a fight and essentially get nothing done. Ideally, enemies are knocked prone initially, and then once they get up, they try to move out of the ice and just keep slipping and getting knocked prone. This will trap enemies for many turns, and unlike most surfaces, Sleet Storm is very difficult to jump out of. This is a key issue for a lot of the weaker surface spells. Enemies might take one turn and then just jump out of it. For one, the AoE is huge, so enemies might just not be able to reach the edge of the storm if they're in the middle of it. But the other thing is, they often just literally can't do it because they don't have enough move speed. Your standard enemy has 30 feet of movement. Getting up from prone costs 15, and jumping from difficult terrain costs 20. So to jump out of a Sleet Storm, it costs you 35 move speed total, which they just don't have. Better yet, above just crippling all movement, whenever an enemy does get knocked prone from moving on the ice, their turn just ends, even if they didn't take an action yet. Melee enemies especially will often get to do nothing for many turns in a row because of this. Ranged enemies will still have the opportunity to attack you. You can negate this with darkness, positioning, or taking them down first, but the spell is generally less effective against range. Something of note is that ice surfaces can be melted by fire damage. When you cast the spell, it will put out any fire that's already there, so you don't need to worry about casting it on top of a candle, but any subsequent fire damage from spells or weapons will melt the ice. This isn't actually a bad thing though, and you can abuse it in some ways. The way Sleet Storm works is that at the end of the caster's turn, it will refreeze the water left behind by melting ice. This means that you can use all the fire damage you want. You can also use as much physical damage as you want because the blood will get frozen over as well. This is abusable in the sense that you can cast Sleet Storm to knock enemies prone, use fire damage to melt the ice, and then send your melee characters into the fight without risking them slipping. They go in, attack, get out, and then at the end of the caster's turn, the water will refreeze, and enemies will still have to take all of the negative effects. Let's get into the grades. I think the spell is excellent. It is a premier crowd control option and a great use of both your concentration and your level 3 spell slot. I have an S for every point in the game. In the middle section here, there are a few A's. Versatility is an A. I think the large size is incredible, but it is a little limiting in the sense that it can be hard to use in small spaces. There are also just certain kinds of encounters in the game where a big AoE crowd control spell isn't what you need. Price is also an A. It does cost concentration, which could make it an even lower price grade, but it still gets an A because the ice surface will stick around even after losing it for a few turns. For classes and items, this spell pairs very well with spell save DC items. Save DC is key to make sure the positive feedback loop of prone, keeping enemies stuck, is active. Ranged attackers pair well with this spell because they can just shoot fish in a barrel while they can't fight back. It also pairs well with cloud effects because they can stack, and pushes and shoves to bully anyone who thinks they deserve to leave the Sleet Storm. Overall, I think that this spell is certainly an S tier spell. Next up is Plant Growth. Plant Growth. Make weeds burst from the ground and smother the area. Creatures moving through the weeds have their movement speed quartered. This costs your action and your spell slot to cast, and it has a range of 60 feet, with no upcasting benefit. The plant growth has a radius of 20 feet and lasts for up to 10 turns, and this is learned by bards, druids, archfey warlocks, nature domain clerics, land druids, rangers, and ancients paladins. Plant growth simply creates an area of difficult terrain that quarters enemy move speed instead of halving it. Despite being a simple effect, this is very strong. 30 feet of move speed, which is standard, is not enough to get out of the plant growth with a jump, which costs 40 move speed. That means that when you cast the spell on an enemy, it's going to be difficult to get out of. There aren't really many tricks to it, it's just very limiting. Some enemies, like Githyanki, might have Misty Step, and abilities like this that let enemies move without getting it quartered can nullify the spell, and that is true for most area spells. Plant Growth's main use is to be paired with other spells that create clouds or some other area effect, and it is really the ideal partner. Hunger of Hadar, for example, is a very strong spell, and it's made even stronger when enemies have a quartered move speed instead of having. They're going to take a lot more damage over time. Cloud Kill is another one that pairs well. Enemies normally have no movement restrictions when in Cloud Kill, but with Plant Growth, they're going to take a lot of damage. This is really the ultimate spell to pair with other spells that you would want to keep enemies inside of. Uniquely, this spell has no concentration cost, which is huge. Most area spells do cost concentration, and not having that makes this spell much more consistent and easier to cast. Along with pairing with other spells, another good use of Plant Growth is in narrow chokes. A 20-foot radius is good, but not great. So if you cast it with an enemy in the middle of the spell, they'll get out of it on their second turn, and it really can't control big spaces well at all. So you want to use it in a way that enemies are forced to walk through it to get to you, and need to walk across as much of it as possible. For grades, I think this is a strong but somewhat limited option. It's more of a side dish to other spells' entrees. I have a B for every point in the game. I have a C for versatility because of the small size and flammability, which I haven't mentioned yet. It makes it very difficult to just throw the spell out. You need to be thoughtful and targeted with your use of Plant Growth. Uniqueness gets an S, because quartering movement is very unique, and it makes the spell an unmatched option for pairing with cloud spells. Price is also an S. No concentration on this spell is really incredible. For class and item interactions, anything that negates difficult terrain is good for your party. The Ring of Free Action is a good example, and the Land Stride on Barbarians and Druids are very good, and they will let your party traverse the Plant Growth freely. Overall, I think Plant Growth is a high B tier spell. Onto the tier list, I think both of these spells are somewhat overlooked. Many people do know Sleet Storm is good, but I think newer players and people who haven't tried it, they just don't pick up on it too quickly. Plant Growth is definitely fairly overlooked because it is so simple. It just looks like difficult terrain, but understanding how much better quartering is than having is important. Sleet Storm is above Mass Healing Word for sure, and Plant Growth I think is on a similar level to Hypnotic Pattern. It's definitely got more niche uses than Hypnotic Pattern, but I'm going to give that spell credit for its strong CC capabilities and put it above Plant Growth. Alright, that's all I've got for today. Thank you all for watching, and I hope you enjoyed. Have a good one.